You ever walk into a room and just feel all eyes on you? Not in a good way either, more like everyone's trying to figure out what the hell you're doing there. That was the vibe the moment Trey Daniels stepped into that courtroom. 16 years old. Cheap navy blue suit. Fresh haircut. No lawyer's briefcase. Just a worn backpack slung over one shoulder and a face that still had a hint of baby fat. The security guard at the metal detector almost laughed. "You lost, kid." "This ain't traffic court." Trey smiled politely. "I'm exactly where I need to be, sir." By the time he made it through the doors, the place had already started filling. Lawyers chatting with their clients, a few folks dressed in county orange, and up at the front, presiding over it all, was Judge Ronald Whitaker. Now Whitaker was known for two things: his booming voice and his booming ego. He ruled that courtroom like it was his kingdom. Didn't matter who you were. If you didn't look the part, you'd better brace yourself. So when Trey walked in, took a seat at the defendant's table, and opened his notebook, Judge Whitaker paused mid-sentence. Excuse me," the judge said, leaning forward. "Who exactly are you?" Trey stood. "I'm representing the defendant today, Your Honor." The courtroom burst into light chuckles. Someone in the back even coughed out a sarcastic, "Okay?" The judge laughed too, but it was cold. "You mean to tell me," Whitaker said, squinting over his glasses, "that this child is here to practice law in my courtroom?" Trey didn't flinch. "Yes, Your Honor." "With the court's permission." Whitaker shook his head. "Permission? Son, you need more than permission. You need a law degree, bar license, and a few gray hairs before you come talking like that in my court." "I understand the concern," Trey replied, his voice calm, "but everything's in order. You'll find the appropriate documents filed with your clerk this morning." The judge rolled his eyes, clearly humoring what he thought was a prank. He motioned to the clerk. She flipped through the stack of papers beside her, then paused. Her eyebrows arched as she handed something up to the judge. He read, then read again. His jaw tightened. "Mr. Daniels," Whitaker said, his tone more serious now. "What is this?" Trey walked to the front, handed over a laminated ID. The courtroom was quiet now. You could hear someone adjusting their chair in the back. "That's a provisional advocacy certificate," Trey explained, "issued under the Youth Legal Access Initiative. I've passed all state-level mock trial qualifications, ranked top in the regionals, and I've been granted limited courtroom practice under supervision. I'm authorized to represent clients in non-felony cases." Whitaker scanned the ID, looking like he'd just swallowed a lemon. "You've got to be kidding me." "No, sir." The judge leaned back in his chair, glaring at Trey like he still didn't buy it. "All right, Mr. Daniels," he said, lacing the words with sarcasm. "Let's see what the boy wonder can do." But Trey wasn't done surprising him. Because what Whitaker didn't know, what nobody in that courtroom knew, was that this case wasn't just some minor civil issue. And Trey wasn't just some prodigy trying to play grown-up. No, this case had stakes. Deep personal ones. And Trey had been planning this moment for years. You could feel the tension thicken air. The courtroom wasn't laughing anymore. They were watching now, real close. Some folks leaned forward in their seats, others whispering under their breath like they were trying to solve a mystery that hadn't even started yet. Trey Daniels sat down at the defense table like he'd done this 100 times before. Calm, controlled. He pulled out a binder worn and thick with tabs and opened to the first page. Across from him sat his client, a middle-aged man named Marcus Cole. Nervous guy. Hands shaking. Accused of shoplifting from a high-end grocery store just outside of town. Small case, right? That's what Judge Whitaker thought too. Just another open end shut for the books. But Trey knew something the judge didn't. He knew this case had layers. Hidden cameras, fake receipts, a manager with a history of profiling, and one buried security report that never made it into discovery. Trey glanced over at the prosecution's table. Assistant Dia, Wendy Grant. Sharp suit, slick ponytail, and an expression that said, "This'll be over in 20 minutes. She clearly didn't take Trey seriously either. Barely even looked at him when she stood to deliver her opening. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, strolling past the jury box, "what we have here is a simple theft. Mr. Cole was caught on tape exiting the store with $117 worth of unpaid merchandise. The store manager identified him. Security detained him. There's no mystery here. Only guilt. She sat down with a smug smile. Judge Whitaker turned to Trey. "Your turn, counselor," he said, the last words still dripping with disbelief. Trey stood. His voice didn't waver. He didn't rush. He looked every juror in the eye. "This case is about more than a receipt," he said. "It's about assumptions. It's about how a man can be judged the moment he walks into a store, not because of what he's done, but because of how he looks." A few heads turned. The jurors shifted. Trey clicked a remote. A slide popped up on the courtroom monitor. Security cam footage. Grainy black and white. It showed Marcus Cole entering the store. Nothing unusual. He walked through the aisles. Picked up a can. Put it back. "This footage was provided by the store," Trey explained. "But it starts 2 minutes after my client entered the building." "Where's the first 2 minutes of footage?" The room went still. Judge Whitaker narrowed his eyes. "Are you suggesting evidence was tampered with?" "I'm suggesting it was selected very carefully," Trey answered. "And I intend to show exactly why." The judge leaned forward. "You better have proof to back up that kind of claim, Mr. Daniels." "I do, Your Honor. But I'd like to call the store manager to the stand first." That's when Wendy Grant stood up. "Objection," she said, confused. "The defense never submitted a witness list. The manager isn't on it." Trey calmly flipped to a page in his binder and handed it to the clerk. "Correction. He was added under Supplementary Rule 26B3. Filed at 8:01 this morning. Stamped and time-logged by the clerk's office." Wendy frowned. The judge looked to the clerk. She nodded. Whitaker scratched his chin. "Fine," he muttered. "Call your witness." That's when the double doors creaked open, and in walked a tall, thin man in a beige polo shirt and stiff khakis. Ronald Griggs, store manager, age 49, and the man Trey Daniels had been waiting to confront for 3 long years. Because Griggs didn't just accuse Marcus Cole of shoplifting. 3 years ago, he accused someone else too. Someone younger. Someone innocent. Someone who almost got locked up because of a lie. Trey Daniels. Griggs didn't recognize Trey at first. Why would he? To him, Trey was just another face he'd profiled and forgotten. But as soon as Griggs sat down, raised his right hand, and swore to tell the truth, there was a flicker, just a flash in his eyes. That "wait a second" look. Trey noticed. The jury noticed. And Judge Whitaker. He leaned in, curious now, as if he sensed there was something deeper going on. Trey stepped up to the podium. "Mr. Griggs," he began, "can you confirm that you were managing the Greystone Market on the afternoon of March 4th? "Yes." "And were you the one who initially accused Mr. Cole of theft?" Griggs nodded. "Correct." "Based on what evidence?" "He walked out with merchandise he didn't pay for." "Did you personally witness him stealing?" "I reviewed the footage." "Did you speak to him directly?" "No." "Security handled it." Trey paused, then flipped to a page in his binder. "And you've worked at Greystone for how long?" 13 years. "Ever been reprimanded for false accusations?" "Objection." The prosecutor jumped in like she'd just been stung. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant. We're here for Mr. Cole's case, not to put Mr. Griggs on trial." But Trey was ready. "Your Honor," he said, voice steady, "this speaks directly to Mr. Griggs' credibility. If this witness has a history of racial profiling or bias, the jury deserves to know." Judge Whitaker hesitated. He stared at Trey, then at Griggs, then finally nodded. "I'll allow it. But tread carefully, Mr. Daniels." Trey turned back to Griggs. "Do you recall an incident on April 12th, 3 years ago?" "Same store. A young black teenager accused of stealing a phone charger." Griggs stiffened. "I vaguely. Do you remember calling the police?" "I may have. We had issues with theft back then. You told the officers he was hiding merchandise in his backpack. They searched it. Found nothing." "Remember that." Griggs said nothing. Trey stepped closer. "That teenager was me." Silence. Complete, dead silence. Trey let it hang in the air. Let every word echo in the courtroom like a dropped hammer. "I was 14, he continued. "I came in to buy a charger. You followed me. Watch me. Then you told the cashier to stall me while you called the cops." Judge Whitaker raised an eyebrow. "Is this true, Mr. Griggs?" he asked. Griggs cleared his throat. I don't recall the details. I do, Trey snapped. Because you didn't just accuse me, you humiliated me. You made me sit in the back of that store while customers stared. You told the police I fit the description, but there was no description. There was no theft. Just you making a call you never should have made. Griggs looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. And now, Trey said, his voice sharper, you're doing it again. To Marcus Cole. The same routine. Same assumptions. But this time, I'm not a scared teenager. I'm the one questioning you. The courtroom murmured. Even the jurors looked shaken. Trey turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I move to admit this past incident into the record. I have the police report, the store complaint, and a letter of apology issued by the regional manager after my mother threatened to sue. The judge stared at Trey, stunned. Submit the document, he finally said. The court will consider them. Trey nodded and handed over the file. But the damage was already done. Griggs sat in the witness chair, sweating, stammering. His credibility was shattered. The jury saw it. So did the press. They were just starting to realize this trial wasn't going to be some quiet Tuesday story. Wendy Grant, the prosecutor, looked furious. She started scribbling on her notepad, whispering to her paralegal. And Judge Whitaker, for the first time all day, didn't look so smug. But Trey wasn't finished. Not even close. Because the next piece of evidence, it didn't just expose a lie. It proved that Marcus Cole never stole anything. And that someone else wanted him to look guilty. The courtroom felt suffocating now. The air was thick with anticipation, like everyone was waiting for the bomb to drop. Trey Daniels had already stunned them with his sharp mind, his confidence, and his personal vendetta against Griggs. But what came next wasn't just about a man's reputation. It was about a conspiracy to frame an innocent man. Trey returned to the defense table, his hands steady as he pulled out the final piece of evidence. Your Honor, he said, I would like to enter into evidence a set of security footage that was never shown to the court until today. The judge raised an eyebrow. What is it, Mr. Daniels? This footage was from another camera in the store, one that was conveniently forgotten during the original investigation. It shows the moments before Mr. Cole was accused of theft. Trey clicked a button on his remote, and the footage came up on the screen. It was grainy, but clear enough. It showed Marcus Cole walking down an aisle, picking up an item, then walking towards the exit. But here's where things got interesting. In the footage, right before Marcus reached the self-checkout, a tall man in a gray hoodie slid something into his jacket pocket. The entire courtroom went dead quiet. The man wasn't Marcus. It was another customer, a man in his 30s, wearing dark sunglasses and a hoodie pulled low over his head. That's the real thief, Trey said, his voice calm but cutting. A man who walked past Marcus Cole, picked up a bottle of expensive liquor from the shelf, and slipped it into his coat. This footage shows it clearly. He paused, letting the weight of the evidence sink in. And yet, Trey continued, the store manager, Mr. Griggs, never mentioned this. He never reviewed this footage, even though it was readily available. Why? Griggs was shaking his head. That's not true, he muttered. You can. But Trey wasn't letting him off the hook. You said yourself, Mr. Griggs, you checked the footage. You said you watched Marcus Cole. But you didn't watch the whole thing, did you? Trey turned to the judge. This footage shows the real theft. And the reason Griggs didn't mention it was because Trey let the room hang in the balance. His eyes locked with Griggs. Because he was involved. A ripple of shock spread through the courtroom. Whitaker's face tightened. Are you suggesting Mr. Griggs was complicit in the theft? Trey nodded. Not only complicit, Your Honor, but he was part of a scheme to frame Marcus Cole for the crime. Now the gasps were impossible to ignore. Wendy Grant jumped to her feet. Objection. This is outrageous, Mr. Daniels. You're making baseless accusations with no proof. Trey wasn't deterred. Your Honor, I can prove it. He clicked the remote again, and this time an email appeared on the screen. The subject line read, Greystone Market, Discrepancies in Inventory. Trey turned to face Griggs. This email was sent from your account, Mr. Griggs. The subject matter, a conversation with a third-party supplier about disappearing stock, including several bottles of high-end liquor that never made it onto the shelves. Griggs paled. Are you saying? Why? I never. I didn't. He was stammering, now visibly sweating. You were running a side deal, Trey pressed. You were stealing stock from the store, reselling it on the black market. And you needed someone to take the fall for the missing merchandise. You chose Marcus Cole, not because he was guilty, but because he was easy to blame. You knew he didn't fit the description of a thief, so you planted the story, you faked the footage, and when that didn't stick, you framed him with a different set of lies. Griggs finally broke. His face crumpled as the weight of the truth crashed down on him. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, he muttered, his voice cracking. It was supposed to be a small thing, just a way to cover up the missing stock. You didn't think about the person you were ruining in the process, Trey shot back. Marcus didn't know you, didn't even know you were watching him. He didn't deserve any of this. Griggs' hands trembled. He couldn't look at anyone in the room. He knew the walls were closing in, but Trey wasn't finished. He turned to the jury, his voice steady and commanding. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case isn't just about theft. It's about justice. It's about a man, an innocent man, whose life was almost destroyed because of a lie. The evidence is clear. The motive is clear. And the truth is in front of you. Griggs was done. The jury knew it. The judge knew it. And for the first time all day, Trey's gaze softened. He had achieved what he'd come for. But the story wasn't over yet. There was one last truth to uncover. And it was going to be the most shocking revelation of all. Trey Daniels stood tall as the courtroom waited in silence. Griggs wasn't just framing Marcus. He and Sarah Jenkins, the assistant manager, were stealing from the store for years, he said, his voice calm but firm. They blamed customers for the missing stock and set up Marcus to take the fall. Griggs' face went pale. He tried to protest, but his words faltered. That's not true, he muttered weakly. Trey didn't stop. Jenkins was taking high-ticket items, reselling them, and Griggs helped cover it up. When Marcus walked in, they saw an easy target. They needed someone to blame. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Trey turned to the judge, his expression steady. I request a full investigation into Greystone Market and its employees. This conspiracy can't go unpunished. Judge Whitaker nodded. The investigation will proceed. Mr. Griggs will be held accountable. Marcus, free at last, exchanged a relieved glance with Trey. Trey had shown the world the truth. He wasn't just a teenager in disguise, but a genius attorney. The case was over, and justice had prevailed.